Imagine sitting at the dinner table with your family every night, unaware that the person sitting across from you pulled off the most daring and mysterious crime in American history, and never got caught. For over 50 years, the identity of one man has confused the FBI, fascinated the media, and captured the imagination of millions. A man who hijacked a plane, took $200,000 in cash, and disappeared into a storm with a parachute, never to be seen again. But now, his own children have come forward with evidence that changes everything. You're about to hear a story so detailed, so personal and so explosive, it's forcing the FBI to reopen one of the most legendary cold cases of all time. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is about real people, real secrets, and a quiet confession that could finally unmask the man we've only ever known as D.B. Cooper. Back in 1971, nobody could have predicted how one ordinary flight would become a permanent part of American criminal history. On the afternoon of November 24th, passengers began boarding Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305 in Portland, Oregon. It was a short trip to Seattle, just another routine flight. People were traveling home for Thanksgiving. Families, business travelers, tired workers. One of them was a man in a black business suit, carrying a briefcase, wearing a white shirt and a thin black tie. He looked polite, clean-cut, quiet. He bought his ticket under the name Dan Cooper. Nothing about him stood out. He wasn't suspicious, angry, or strange. He boarded the plane, sat in the back, and ordered a drink, a bourbon and soda. For the first half hour of the flight, nothing happened. Everything was completely normal. Then, that man in the black suit handed a note to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was just another passenger flirting, and slipped the note into her pocket without reading it. But the man leaned toward her calmly and said, "Miss, I think you should read that note. I have a bomb." That moment changed her life, and history, forever. Startled, Florence opened the note and read his demands. He asked for $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck to be waiting in Seattle. The man stayed calm. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten to hurt anyone beyond what he needed. He even opened his briefcase and showed her what looked like dynamite and wires, enough to convince the crew that this was real. But unlike other hijackings of that era, this man was organized. He didn't want to make a political statement or hurt innocent people. He just wanted money and a way out. When the plane landed in Seattle, the FBI delivered the money and parachutes. The hijacker released all the passengers unharmed, keeping just the pilot, co-pilot, a flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant. Then he gave new instructions. The plane was to take off again and head toward Mexico City. But this part is what set his plan apart from anything the FBI had ever seen. He gave very specific flight conditions. Fly under 10,000 feet, keep the speed low, keep the landing gear down, and leave the rear stairs open. Most people didn't even know that the Boeing 727 had a feature where the rear stairs could be lowered during flight. But this man knew. And that wasn't luck. At around 8:13 p.m., somewhere above Washington State, the crew felt a sudden shift in the aircraft. The pressure changed, and the tail of the plane seemed to move. The man had jumped into the freezing storm, into pitch-black skies, over dense forest, wearing a parachute, and carrying $200,000 strapped to his body. No one on board saw him jump. No one knew exactly where he went. When the plane landed, he was gone. What he left behind was almost nothing. Just his black tie, a tie clip, and 2 of the parachutes. No fingerprints that could be traced. No confirmed DNA, no crash site, no body, no money ever showed up in circulation, except a small amount found 9 years later by a boy digging in the sand near the Columbia River. That small stack of decaying bills was the only physical clue in a case that had already grown cold. The FBI immediately launched what would become the longest and most expensive investigation in its history. They named it NORJAC, short for Northwest Hijacking. For over 4 decades, agents chased leads, followed suspects, and interviewed thousands of people. They considered hundreds of potential suspects, from military veterans to criminals to missing persons. But every time they thought they were getting close, the evidence fell apart. The hijacker, known as D.B. Cooper, had vanished completely. But here's what made Cooper different. He didn't scream, he didn't act out, he didn't try to hurt anyone. He was calm, collected, and almost gentlemanly. That strange combination of danger and charm made people start to see him not just as a criminal, but as a legend. Movies were made about him, books were written, TV shows dramatized his story. People dressed as him for Halloween. He became folklore, the man who beat the system. But was it really folklore, or was it all a carefully planned illusion? Fast forward 4 months, April 7, 1972. Another Boeing 727 is hijacked. This time, United Airlines Flight 855. Again, a man hands a note to a flight attendant, claiming he has a bomb. Again, he demands money. This time, $500,000. He forces the plane to land, gets the cash and parachutes, and jumps from the rear stairs just like D.B. Cooper. This time, though, he's caught. His name was Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. He was a 29-year-old Vietnam War veteran, helicopter pilot, and family man. At first, the FBI thought they had their man. The similarities were too close. But after looking at age differences and small details, they decided McCoy couldn't be Cooper. He was too young. He had no solid alibi for the first hijacking, but nothing directly tied him to it either. So they dropped the connection. McCoy was sent to prison. 2 years later, he escaped using a fake gun made of dental paste. He was eventually found by FBI agents and killed during a shootout in Virginia. And just like that, whatever secrets he had went with him to the grave. For decades, nothing new came up. Until now. In 2023, everything changed. While cleaning out an old family shed in North Carolina, 2 adult siblings made a discovery that stopped them in their tracks. Their names were Chanté and Richard McCoy III, the children of Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. They were going through boxes of their late mother's belongings when they found a strange military-style parachute. But this wasn't the kind of parachute their father had used in the military. The stitching, the hardware, the design, it was all different, older, more unique. Something about it didn't belong in a shed in North Carolina. Something about it felt hidden, like a secret waiting to be found. They contacted a man named Dan Grider, a former airline pilot and YouTube investigator, who had studied the D.B. Cooper case for years. When he saw the parachute, he instantly realized what it could mean. Everything matched. The straps, the ripcord, even the exact type of chute the FBI had given to Cooper back in 1971. This wasn't just some old military gear. This was possibly the same parachute that Cooper had used to escape. The McCoy siblings had always wondered if their father was hiding something. His military knowledge, his calm under pressure, his understanding of aircraft, it all lined up. But they never had proof, not until now. They debated whether to go public. Doing so would mean opening their family to media attention, internet theories, and a lot of judgment. But in the end, they felt the truth was bigger than their fear. They contacted the FBI, and even though the FBI had officially closed the Cooper case in 2016, they had said that if any new physical evidence turned up, they would reopen it. And that's exactly what they did. Agents came to the McCoy property and collected the parachute. It was transported to the FBI's forensic lab in Quantico, Virginia, where it is now undergoing advanced DNA testing. Scientists are searching for any trace of biological material, sweat, skin cells, hair fragments, that could link the parachute to Cooper, or his tie, which the FBI has preserved since 1971. The key now is whether the DNA from the parachute matches any of the biological traces left behind during the hijacking. There's even talk that the FBI may exhume Richard McCoy's body to take a fresh DNA sample and compare it directly to the samples collected in 1971. If they match, it could be the biggest breakthrough in the case's history. So what if Cooper was McCoy all along? It would mean that Cooper didn't disappear into the wilderness. He went home. He lived a double life, loving father by day, skyjacker by night. He may have sat through PTA meetings, birthday parties, and backyard barbecues, all while knowing that he had pulled off one of the most famous crimes of all time and gotten away with it. At least, for a little while. And maybe the reason he did it again, in 1972, was because he thought he could. He had already done the impossible once. Maybe he thought lightning could strike twice. But that time, he wasn't so lucky. The story of D.B. Cooper has always been more than just a mystery. It's about deception, planning, and escaping the consequences of crime in a way that no one had seen before. But it's also about something more human. It's about the people left behind. The children who grow up wondering who their parents really were. The investigators who spend decades chasing someone who may have been sitting in plain sight. And the public's fascination with a man who became a legend without ever showing his face again. This new evidence is more than just an old parachute. It's the key to a story that might finally have a true ending. The FBI is testing the materials. Forensic experts are combing over every detail. And soon we may finally know who D.B. Cooper really was. Not a ghost, not a myth, just a man. A man who jumped out of a plane, vanished into history, and lived with the truth while the rest of the world searched for it. And now, after all these years, that truth might finally be landing. If this story gripped you, if you're still with us, now's the moment to hit that like button and subscribe for more true crime stories that uncover hidden truths. But more importantly, share this video, because the more people who hear this, the more pressure builds to reveal the final result. What happens next could change criminal history, and you'll want to say you were here when it broke. We'll keep following this story and update you the moment the DNA results come in. So stay tuned, because the skyjacker who outsmarted the world may finally be out of time.